Oh, it's got cramp in my leg. Is Conor McGregor returning? Mark and I are going to discuss this, but before we do, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe as we have brand new videos every single week. So first things first, there was a leak or an apparent leak that came out that seemed to suggest that Conor was going to be fighting Chandler in December. It took us all hook, line, and sinker, and it seems that it is definitely fake now. But what brings up a really interesting question is, it really seemed to highlight how much excitement there was for a return of Conor. Mark, are you interested in Conor returning, and why do you think people are interested in it?
I'm interested. I'm not because I'm like a huge fan of him, but just in the sense of it's a spectacle, isn't it? You know, you can tell that the whole MMA world is buzzing when Conor McGregor's fighting, whether it's announced or whether he's actually stepping inside the cage. And that's one of those you want to get to the pub, you want to hear your friends' opinions on it. I am interested, and I swear that the big interest that is still looming over Conor is a lot of the fans from 2015/2016. They want that version of Conor back, and you've got to ask yourself: is he still that guy? Is he still? You
Yeah,
know, like we've had unfortunate. Been knocked out. He had the unfortunate leg injury, and you sometimes. I mean, maybe this fight will tell if he is still that fighter. What do you think?
yeah, 100%. That's what people really want to know. That's the big looming question, isn't it? Is he still that fighter he once was? But I think why people are so interested in Conor is because almost all of his career in some way is iconic. Even when he loses it, they're iconic moments. You know, the first knockout of his career, the shock loss to Nate Diaz, the disaster after he lost to Khabib and all that big mess of all jumping out of the cage, when he snapped his leg. You know, even when you're losing, you're making iconic moments of the sport. And that's what's so memorable about him. And I think people just want more and more of those moments. And, you know, and maybe we'll still get some of those, but who knows? But so the plan is, or the rumors were that he would return in December. But the big problem is he can't return in December because he needs to have 6 months in USADA. But Michael Chandler made a very, very interesting point. He said when he made his UFC debut, he was only in the USADA testing pool for 1 month. So if Chandler can do it, how come Conor can't do it? So do you think that Conor should have to do the 6 months, or do you think they should just let him get on with it?
It's such a grey area. All this, like, 6 months USADA, and because as fans we don't really know. We can listen to what someone said one time, but I bet we'll find out about 10% of what goes on behind the scenes. I think as a standard rule, you should be in the USADA pool for 6 months, no matter who you are, whether you're an unranked fighter or whether you're the king of England. If you're fighting in the UFC, you need to be in the USADA pool for 6 months beforehand, especially if they're wanting to clamp down and really stamp out that negative, that thought process of what they've had before. We've had it with John Jones, Uncle Chael, even though I think he's just naturally strong like the Hulk. But I think if they want to get rid of that grey area, that them negative comments, that kind of thing, you've really got to cement that you have to be in the pool for 6 months before you can fight. And I don't believe that we should be, cutting corners for any fighter.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think no matter what, if that's the rule, if you're supposed to be in there for 6 months, then you have to stick by that rule and you can't change it because I can't pretend to know anything about steroids and TRT, and I literally know nothing. So I don't know whether it's still in your system after 6 months. I do not have a clue. So if that's what USADA is saying, that's what needs to be done. But another question for you, Mark. So with Conor taking himself out of the testing pool for his injury, and I'm not saying he's taken anything because, like we've said before, I don't know anything. Nobody knows nothing. It does wind me up like so many people talk about like they know so much about steroids and stuff because they've watched one video on YouTube, so it makes them an expert. So I'm not saying he is or he isn't, but let's assume that he has taken something and that's why he took himself out of the testing pool because things seem to suggest that he is. How do you feel about people taking themselves out for injury sakes?
Well, I'm no expert either, but I can guarantee that isn't just creatine and chicken rice and broccoli, that transition that he made. But honestly, especially with an injury that Conor sustained, you take yourself out of the pool, whether you need to take something in order to make a speedy recovery or something like that. I think that's fair enough. And especially in the sense of taking yourself out of the pool, that would suggest that you're out for a long time injured. And especially with Conor's injury, that isn't exactly a quick turnaround that you can just come back with, isn't it? That takes a long time to heal, to restructure, to start retraining again, and the rehab. I honestly, I don't think I've got a problem with that at all, because
Yeah,
you take yourself out, but as long as you take the necessary steps in order to get back into the pool,
yeah,
you know.
I agree. I'm exactly the same. I think if you've suffered such a significant injury, you should take yourself out of the pool, because don't forget these substances they're taking. I mean, not like I know what substances they're taking, but if this was like a normal person and you snapped your leg, you would be given some kind of steroid. Like in the spring, I get a steroid nasal spray for my nose. I've got the toughest nose during the spring, it's big, muscly. These are very normal sort of medicines that people take. And so I think you should just take yourself out, get healed up, and then, like you said, take the 6 months to get back into it properly. And it's a shame that Conor's not doing that, but hopefully he will, because I really, really want to see his return. I'm that fan you were talking about before. I want Conor to make that big return, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So if Conor does return in December, there's rumors that he'd be the main event and Sean O'Malley would be the co-main event. How do you feel about a non-champion main eventing over a champion?
I think that's another grey area, because I think it's on paper it sounds like a snub, doesn't it? Like you are the champion currently, not of yesteryear. You are now the current champion of this day, and you're bumped to the co-main event. But the thing is, as well, though, you've got to ask yourself, take that as a whole. It's Sean O'Malley versus, presuming, Chito Vera. Does Chito Vera deserve the main event spot? Yeah. But yet Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler do. Like they've each had main event spots before. Sean O'Malley's had one. So if you take all that into consideration, it kind of makes sense. And I'm no advocate for, Conor jumping the line or anything like that, because I'm not exactly the biggest fan of it, but you've got to take it as a whole situation rather than just Conor or Sean O'Malley, because we're acting as if there isn't two other people involved in this.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, because you're so right there. Does someone like Cheeto deserve to be a main event? But what I think is really interesting, I think almost any champion in the UFC would be happy to co-main event for McGregor, because if he's not on the card, you're not getting those juicy pay-per-view points, right? So it's almost, there's an incentive to have him on your card, because it'll be the biggest card of the year. It'll probably be in the top 5, top 10 UFC events ever. So you think, well, they're going to be well incentivized, and it's going to be a lot of money. So I think, normally I'm not a big fan of making exceptions for fighters and, sort of like you were saying, pushing people up the queue. But I think with sort of the legacy and the name that Conor has, you couldn't put him in the co-main event, could you? Because everyone's there to see him. He is the main attraction. Even if he opened the card or he was the co-main, he is that main attraction, and there's no denying it. Is there any other way, really? But if Conor does make a return, do you think he could feasibly make an actual run for the belt again? Or do you think he should more focus on exhibition type matches, fight Chandler, Gagey for the BMF, RDA, maybe Dustin again, stuff like that, rather than focusing on the title?
I think all will be revealed in his next fight, honestly. And I think you can go off that. If, hypothetically, Dwayne, if Chandler knocked Conor out, I think the dream's over. And I think a lot of fans would probably just accept reality at that point, because there's only so many times that you can keep coming back and coming back. There's a few possibilities, and if you're one of those people who believe every word that comes out of Conor's mouth, you'll be constantly excited. Anytime there's a fight that goes on in welterweight, featherweight, or lightweight, Conor's tweeting about it. Like even called for the Nate Diaz trilogy. I don't think anyone's really that interested in that. It'd sell, don't get me wrong, they would sell, but I think Conor is too big of a star to just throw in exhibition fights. Like, I think the second that it's announced Conor versus KSI bare knuckle, I think a lot of fans will jump ship, to be honest.
Oh, honestly, when he was saying all that stuff, I mean, hopefully he doesn't actually want to fight KSI. So I think he's more just focused on publicity. You know, he is a marketing machine and he knows, right, KSI is popular. If I say I'm going to box his bleeding head off, it'll get people talking about me. And it did, didn't it? And I just hope he doesn't go down that route. I won't be happy. But I would love to see him make one more last run, one real run. Come back, knock out Chandler, batter Justin Gagey, get his revenge on Dustin, come out, fight Islam Makhachev, knock him out in the first round, hop over the cage, drop kick Khabib, and then go up, beat up Leon Edwards, retire off as a double champ, do a big line of coke, and go off on his yacht and sail off forever. That is my dream for Conor. But in reality, he's probably going to get knocked out in the second round by Chandler, and I'm going to cry. But you know,
the thing is with that though, is it depends. We've said it every single Michael Chandler fight. If he fights smart, he's got the ability to beat anyone in that division.
But he doesn't.
That's it. That's exactly it. You know, and you think on paper, Chandler versus Conor, I don't think anyone can really say this is definitely going to happen. Because on paper, like, you just think there's style points for both of them. You know, there's that left hand of Conor's that could find its mark, you know, because especially Chandler leaves himself open. If Conor gets into the second round with Chandler's probably, you know, he's thrown about 100 strikes, missed 95 of them. You know, it's just how he is. But if he lands, Chandler's got some serious power, you know, and I hope this fight happens. Just that fight alone. I'm not looking ahead too much. I just hope this fight happens, because then maybe, you know, as a fan base, we can talk about what can happen after that. But right now, we just need to get this fight booked. I'd love it in December, but again, rules of USADA, that kind of thing. Are we going to give special treatment to certain fighters just because he happens to have the last name McGregor? It's a grey area.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we'll see him in December. I mean, I would love to. It'd be a great Christmas present. It'd be a great final pay-per-view of the year. But there's also a lot of other fighters who I would love to see main event at Christmas. But we'll have to wait and see. But either way, it's going to be incredibly exciting. And I can't wait to see what's going to happen in December. But I do think that's all we've got time for. Thank you for watching. If you can like, comment, and subscribe, it really does help us out.